After months of uncertainty, the Senate finally passed that $60 billion aid package for Ukraine, ending a months-long stalemate that began in the House and delivering a major political victory to President Joe Biden. Susan, Molly, George still with us. Susan, for a time, it felt like Ukraine aid was never going to pass. How big a deal is this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let's note that it's extremely important in terms of the timing for Ukraine because of the delay. The Pentagon ran out of the ability to keep supplying weapons to Ukraine. Russia has gone back on the offensive in Ukraine on the ground. They were running out of ammunition. There were literally commanders reporting that they were unable to fire their weapons at the Russians because of this aid holdup in Washington. There was insufficient air defense at a time when Russia was launching some of its deadliest attacks on civilian targets and energy infrastructure across Ukraine. So this had a very significant real world consequence that Republicans for months refused to allow even a vote on this. I think it's a very significant moment. There's real concern that without this aid provision, which is an additional nearly $60 billion for Ukraine out of the total bill of nearly $95 billion, that this comes almost at the last possible moment to make sure that Ukraine does not suffer major losses, territorial losses to Russia as it goes back on the offensive.
One's on the trail, one is on trial. Molly, they get this thing passed today while Donald Trump is losing it in court. So amidst all this, is Joe Biden winning here?
I mean, this is a win for Joe Biden. And remember, this House came in and they had bold plans, right? They impeached a cabinet secretary, first time in more than 100 years. They tried to impeach Joe Biden on vibes, a vibes-based impeachment. And everything that they have tried has really failed. And they even had to wait on their appliance week, their appliance messaging bill week. I mean, this has been a tough Congress for them, and they keep losing members. And in fact, I think the most meaningful thing that happened was that Marjorie Taylor Greene, who still wants to get rid of Mike Johnson and is still trying to put together this coalition of her and Paul Gosar to get together and Thomas Massie to get together and get rid of the speaker, was sort of told by Trump, right? Trump went on a radio show yesterday and sort of told her to back off. So I don't know what's happening here, but this is wild. And you have Republicans.
MTG and the Gosar All-Stars are losing their footing.
And you have 4 states where Republicans are running against each other in primaries. I mean, if this is not disarray, I don't know what is.
Here's what I want you to explain for us, George. Mitch McConnell, of all people, had an interesting take today. He offered high praise for this bill. And I want to share why he explained this thing took so long to pass. Watch this.
I think the demonization of Ukraine began by Tucker Carlson, who, in my opinion, ended up where he should have been all along, which is interviewing Vladimir Putin. And so he had an enormous audience, which convinced a lot of rank-and-file Republicans that maybe this was a mistake.
That's kind of a wow.
That is a wow. And
from Mitch McConnell.
He's not wrong, but there's this other guy who was complaining about the air conditioning in a Manhattan courtroom today, who also was substantially responsible for this. We should be talking about him as well, the one who wants to give Eastern Europe back to the Russians.
But what he's saying is that his own party, members of his own party, aren't thinking about governing. They're not thinking about the country. No. They're thinking about the media, the right-wing media, and how they can appear.
Right. But they're not, they don't, it's also all about opposition. It's opposition. If Biden wants to help a country, therefore it's bad. And that's basically Trump's view. If Biden wants to have border security, we have to stop it. Right. We have to, it's all just this oppositionism. You're defining, the right-wing media defines conservatism by saying, well, these other people are for X, we have to be, we can't be for it. And, even if it's the national interest of the United States that's at stake.
In some ways, Susan, Mitch McConnell making a statement like that, is he sort of admitting that he's lost control of his Congress? Excuse me, of his conference?
Well, look, Mitch McConnell represents the past in many ways of the Republican Party and not its future. And not only is he, clearly coming to the end of his tenure as the longest serving party leader in Senate history, but, this sort of view of a very hawkish internationalist foreign policy that McConnell represented, is on the downswing in the Republican Party. I agree with George that you can't just talk about Tucker Carlson. You have to talk about Donald Trump as well. But remember, there's a strand that you really can call, I know Liz Cheney calls it the pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party. And, Donald Trump has been leading that. In fact, it was something he talked about even in his first presidential campaign in 2015 and 2016. He's had a personally skeptical view of Ukraine that predates this latest full-scale Russian invasion. In fact, even when he was in the White House, according to our reporting for The Divider, in the spring of 2017, he talked to the previous president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko, in the White House and looked him in the eye and said he didn't believe that Ukraine was a real country. And so I just think this is core to who Donald Trump is. And he has actually polled millions of Republicans who wouldn't otherwise be inclined to support Vladimir Putin. And he's turned this party into this sort of his own Alice in Wonderland view of foreign policy. So I think it's much more about who Trump is as a politician and showing in a way that this cult of personality around him is such that he can bring millions of Republicans with him. To the fact that he's not more vocally opposing the bill right now is fascinating to me. And I do wonder if there is a calculated sense among Republicans, including the new Speaker Mike Johnson, that they didn't want to be blamed for Ukraine doing poorly on the battlefield in the midst of this presidential election here in the United States. But whatever the reason, it's a very important victory right now for anyone who cares about Ukraine. This is a major, major step forward. And for many months, it wasn't clear that we would get to this moment. So, you got to say that without Mike Johnson making that call, in the end, it would not have happened.